Hello and welcome to another Scoutcast from fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. My name is Joe.
My name's David.
My name's Andy.
And my name's Az.
Welcome everyone. So it's been an eventful week since our last Scoutcast. Accidentally a controversial one, but we tried a few new things out. Some went down very well and some less well. So we've listened to feedback and today's show we'll be back to basics. 4 fantasy football managers chatting about key fantasy football issues. Well, that's the plan at least. Andy, what's coming up on the show?
So we've got, hopefully can you hear that, by the way? That massive storm outside. I might
Really?
fall up at some point. But anyway, back on track. Gameweek 5 highs and lows. So a few of us have got, well, one of us I think has got a high. I don't know if anyone else has. Definitely some lows. Rough with the smooth to kind of go through the same kind of thing from the community. And then we're going to be looking at a key player, key team, and then a talking point of the week, which I think David's going to spearhead that. And then, look ahead to Game Week 6, the usual differentials, clean sheets, and general transfers, and I think potentially a couple of wildcards on the show.
There is, yes. Myself and David will be revealing our wildcards, well, as they stand at the moment. But yeah, have a look at. We'll have a look now at our game week's just gone. Andy, you've just wildcarded. Well, I was going to say what went wrong. Nothing. What went right? Who did you ditch and who did you bring in?
Well, instead of telling you about it, what I thought I'd do is do a quick quiz about my wildcard team. I don't know if any of you...
No.
Let's get the buzzer.
Pretty much everything went right. The only... so I know last week I said that I wasn't going to wildcard, I wasn't quite sure, and I genuinely wasn't. And then I hit the button about midnight or 11:59 on Thursday night. Noticed that King was going down, Wilson was going up, and I knew if I wildcarded, I would make that switch, even though saying on the Scoutcast last week that King had penalties. So that kind of backfired a bit, but generally everyone I took out didn't do very well apart from Zaha and King, and everyone that I bought in did. Alonso and Salah blanked. I don't think that will happen too often this season, having those two in the team and then blanking. But other than Ryan, everything else went well. I had Van Bissaka off the bench for Mendy. I bought in Doherty at Wolves and had Jimenez as well. So I went for Jimenez instead of Ings, just because Ings hasn't got a fixture this week and he plays Chelsea at home soon. So stats better, but I think Jimenez was a fair enough punt around that price. And basically, I put my money where my mouth is. I was talking up players I didn't have in my team that I wanted, and I bought in David Silva, Maddison, and Hazard. So that's why I went so cheap in defence, brought in Bennett and Doherty. So I wanted those players in. Obviously, Hazard, everyone was talking about it anyway, but David Silva, kind of underlying stats man, obviously in a team that scores quite heavily. So I wanted to get him in. And Maddison as well, which was a bit jammy in the end, the way it happened with Vardy off the pitch. But I'll take. So yeah, everything kind of went right all in one go. Although in classic FPL manager style, had I not seen the Wolves game, I would have been perfectly happy with 20 points. But because I watched it, could have definitely got more from that game. Like Doherty missing that chance at the end. It was a Jimenez assist. Jimenez missed like four or five shots in the box he had, I think, and he missed them. So
what about
wanted
Johnny?
A little bit more.
Johnny had balls off the line and shots.
It's all about the Irish legend on the right. Yeah, no. I was very impressed with Wolves, but I will say that it was Burnley who haven't been impressive this season. But really impressed with a lot of the Wolves players. I know we're going to talk about them later. So yeah, 91 points. I went from 476k to 85k, I think, something like that. So a pretty big jump.
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm almost welling up really when you're talking about the amount of points you could have got from Wolves with your 91 and your massive jump well into the top 100,000. Yeah, now that is what you call a successful Scoutcast wildcards. So I'm second, 63. I took Bernardo Silva out for David Silva, and that paid off really well. But that's basically pretty much the only thing that did on Saturday. I was well below the average on Saturday. I plummeted to near the 500,000 mark, and it wasn't looking good. But Sunday and Monday were great. Got Bolly. I finally played Bolly. I finally got points from him, which is great. Arnautovic put in a stormer of a show on the Breakfast Club on Saturday, which we did with David and Mark. Mark got his crystal ball out, and it was quite amazing, actually. So he captained Hazard. He said Giroud's going to start and do well. And he also said Arnautovic likes to score at Goodison. So, well, yeah, Gypsy Rose Mark there. So he was right there. And then Ings did me proud on Monday. So 63, and that made up for a very poor Saturday with no Hazard, who obviously did very well. The Mendy out meant that because I was playing 4 at the back, means that I didn't get Wan-Bissaka's 9 points. I got Mkhitaryan's 1 point. And some people were saying, oh, that's unlucky. I say, no, that's really bad skill on my part. I knew that he wasn't going to play. I had the foresight not to play him in my 11. I just didn't really think hard enough about my bench. And if I had that, if I didn't think he was going to play good enough for my 11, then he really should have been behind Wan-Bissaka. That's a blunder. No luck there. So, yeah, David, you're next up. What happened?
Yeah, so I didn't have Hazard, and that was basically ended my game week, really. Like, it was just, it was quite frustrating. I felt very left for dead on Saturday because I decided to roll a transfer. I thought I could maybe fix Mkhitaryan and Bernardo Silva, but I felt both of them would play, and I was 50% right. And Bernardo Silva actually outperformed David Silva with underlying numbers in that game. Had like 5 shots, and David Silva had 1, but still, didn't work out for me. And then Fraser as well, because he was someone I'd considered for a long time. It was one of those days where a lot of people that I had been in my plans just absolutely just let rip, whilst my entire midfield combined for a score of 8 points. So, and that was Mane, Salah, Bernardo Silva, and Mkhitaryan. To be honest, the frustrating thing was the Liverpool game, because that's basically what killed my game week, because I kept with triple Liverpool, Robertson, Mane, and Salah, but with good reason, in my opinion, because I thought about maybe moving one of them onto Hazard, but I just looked at that game against Spurs. I thought Liverpool can win this. I think they can win it big, and they should have done. And the other thing, we're going to talk about it a little bit later. Spurs particularly weak down their right-hand side, so I thought, I've got Mane and I've got Robertson, so I'm going to start them both. And Robertson hit the bar, and Mane was like basically unlucky to not get an assist because of all them touches that got in the way before Firmino scored. So it could have gone really different. I got 47 points. And I had a clean sheet for Robertson, which, let's be honest, we all should have had. Like 93rd minute goal from Spurs, nothing. Come on, and then a goal for Salah and Mane, both of them, that would have been more than deserved. It would have been a much more different game week. And in the end, basically, I've wildcarded now, because I know I need to get Hazard. I need to get him now. I need to get him before he completely shoots up in price. Same with a lot of the other options like Fraser. I'd like the idea of maybe getting Richarlison back in. Nice and early when he's still 6'6". Part of me thinks it was a bit of a knee jerk, but there's lots of things I need to sort with my team. Apart from Wan-Bissaka on my bench, who did come in, my bench needs some work. So I think I'm fairly happy with the decision to wildcard. But yeah, it was a frustrating week. Kind of, there was a tonic of Ings, getting me a goal at the end on Monday night. But yeah, could have gone much better.
Well, we'll talk about your wildcard a bit later when we come to look at our plans, and I'll be interested to see how it shapes up with my wildcard. So as you're bottom of the pile this week, this is unusual for you. You're usually storming ahead of us. So yeah, what did you get? What went wrong?
Well, considering David's tale of woe at getting 47, I'm even worse off at 42. And it was Gundogan who burnt me. I knew he wouldn't play, and I did exactly the same as you, Joe. I benched him because I thought he wouldn't play, and for some reason I didn't put him, behind Wan-Bissaka, who I thought would play. I thought Palace would concede in that game. I wasn't sure about Tompkins starting, and I thought if Tompkins misses out, then the clean sheet's probably less likely. Once I saw Tompkins on the team sheet, and then I remembered how many people would have Wan-Bissaka on the bench and how many people were getting him on, my heart just sank. And of course Gundogan came on. But same as David, when you triple up with Liverpool, and you've got 3 pretty much your most expensive defender and your 2 most expensive midfielders, and they all blank in the first game, it's going to be a rough one. I got lucky with Maddison, taking the penalty with Vardy off the pitch. It's his third lucky goal. He's like the opposite of Christensen. He's just Christensen was like the cursed child of fantasy football. I think Maddison's the blessed one. So I'm happy. He's
stolen all of Christensen's luck.
Exactly. I'm happy to have him in my team. Yeah. I haven't pulled the wildcard button yet. My big decision this week is, do I want to sell Mane for Hazard for a hit? Because I could do Mane and Pedro out.
Well, I'll tell you what. Hold that thought, because we're going to come to that a bit later.
But not a good week.
Not a good week. But onwards and upwards. Luckily, for you. Hopefully, as there's some people who've had an even rougher week than you, but also no doubt there's people who've had a better week than all of us, even Andy. So rough with a smooth as. What have we got?
Well, let's get the people who did well out of the way so that I can wallow with the roughs. So quite a few people sold Salah, which was quite a brave move. So Ashes 74, a squishy potato, sold Salah for Hazard. So 18 points up on that decision. Hazard with West Ham to come. I mean, we talked about luck last week. I mean, what could be more lucky than Trent Alexander-Arnold going off 88 minutes or whatever it was, getting a clean sheet, and then Liverpool conceding? Well, I'll tell you what could be more lucky than that. Having him on your bench and then him coming on for Mendy, which happened to Granville and Green Windmill, which is crazy. And then obviously loads of people got Wan-Bissaka off the bench. Eden Wizard expected to lose. President Giggs, bench boost for every game week. The list goes on with that. But 9 points off your bench is a great return from a 4 million defender, or 4.1.
And what about the roughs then? These are the bits I like.
So roughs. So me and you feature on the rough.
Oh really? I don't like it anymore.
With our 1 point blocks for Wan-Bissaka. Hungry Singh as well had Mkhitaryan first sub. Crossfire Harry Kane had Schlupp first sub, which is even more unlucky because he would have got the 6 points, had he played in the game, but didn't play. There's quite a few Fraser sellers as well. So Simi sold Fraser for Damari Gray. Trashboat sold Fraser for a hit for Pedro, who blanked, and Stephen Cole. This is one Andy found. He wildcarded and he wildcarded out Hazard and Fraser. Still ended up with 55, but he must be wondering, what could have been if he's not done that.
Because people will ask, why would someone transfer out Hazard? He basically made the decision to go with Sterling instead for around the same price point. Who did score, to be fair, but Hazard. I mean, one thing to say about Hazard before we start talking about later is he doesn't score hat-tricks very often, so I feel a bit fortunate there, to be honest.
Brave move, though, selling Hazard.
It was brave.
Yeah,
I think the Fraser.
Cardiff.
I understand the Fraser because he was an injury doubt. There were a lot of people with him on the bench, and ordinarily that would be a crazy move. But I do understand because there was always that fear that he would be benched and maybe come on for a few minutes. But yeah, I mean that's pretty bad luck there. So
to get 18 points and 5.6 midfielder. Pascal Gross did it last year because I had him, but I didn't think Fraser had it in him to score like that. It's amazing.
It's all about Leicester though. Their fullbacks were they just basically didn't spend any time in their own half. And going back over some of the positioning and the quotes from that game, the local press in Leicester was absolutely tearing Pereira apart. They thought he was terrible because he was just Fraser basically just stood where he should have done, and then that's how he scored. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, I looked at it a little bit like 18 points. That's not going to happen every week with Fraser. Because the funny thing is that the reason I wanted to get him in, and I've been looking at him all season, he's really good for creativity. About 2 weeks ago, he was top for chances created. So you're thinking of him as this kind of, pulling the strings midfielder, and then he goes and bangs 2 goals in. Goal threat really wasn't what he had been promising, and he's gone and done it. But I mean, to be honest, that's a little bit to do with what we're going to talk about later about where teams are weak, because Leicester clearly weak in wide areas. So.
Yeah, well, that's nicely introducing there for the community questions. So as we did last time around, we find out what the community is asking us, and we're structuring this around the week's key player or players, key team or teams, and then a talking point as well. So we canvassed opinion about this. So first up is a player. Who is the key player or players that we're discussing, and what are the community asking us about them?
Yeah, I mean, I took this one because obviously it's my big decision this week. I assume you're all getting him because you're all on wildcards. Rhino's asked, is Hazard worth bringing in, even if it means sacrificing a Liverpool midfielder ahead of their enticing home game with Southampton? And seeing as I'm wondering that exact question, it's going to be interesting to see what I come up with, because it's a tricky question. The rumour mill, he says, Hazard, a 20-point haul is hard to ignore, but he did score 3 goals from 4 shots against Cardiff. He's massively outperforming his expected goals and expected assists. Meanwhile, Salah and Mane had 9 shots and made 5 key passes between them against Spurs, and both blanked. Is it worth getting in Hazard, one of these players, or do you envisage a regression to the mean with him?
Wow. Shall I go first on this one? Because I'm getting Hazard in on my wild card. But I haven't wildcarded to get Hazard in. Oddly, I wildcarded to get the second player we're going to talk about in. I'll explain a bit why that is. Do I think Hazard is a great player to own? Yes. There is something different about him. I've looked at the stats, but for me, actually, he's one of these players that the stats don't really tell the true story, because where they've got this new manager and he's very much focusing on getting Hazard to score. So Hazard's, in a way, I think, got a slightly different role this season. He's not really the main creative type. And as we saw last week, it ends up being the centre forward who's creating the chances. So Giroud was creating those chances and assists for Hazard. So I think that's the kind of shape of things to come. I just have a feeling, just through playing this game a long time and having Hazard in it for a long time, is that sometimes you get seasons where Hazard's on it and sometimes you get seasons where he's not. And when I look at the underlying stats, they're okay. But for example, they're not as good as, say, David Silva. So he's created 6 chances. David Silva's created 7. 6 goal attempts. That's the same as David Silva. I mentioned that as in he's another good player, but you've got a 2 million difference. So is Hazard a good player to get in? Yes. Is he essential? No, I don't think so. And if I had Mane, I would keep Mane for Southampton. I'm certainly keeping Salah for Southampton. But yeah, I mean, David, what do you think? Is Hazard on your wild card?
Yeah, he's in there at the moment. I did an article today actually on the website, mainly personally for my own benefit, because I want to know the answer, but I know a lot of people want to know as well. Comparing him with Salah and Mane, and he does actually compare really well. So if you are wildcarding, then I think you've, because that's the, with the question that's kind of come in, it's kind of down this angle of like, do we think that Salah and Mane are going to do well against Southampton, so why move them out? Wildcard's a bit more long term. So yeah, with Hazard, he's basically pretty much outperforming the other two in terms of underlying numbers across the board. There's more detail in the article, people who want to read a little bit more. But I mean, going back to what you were saying about kind of sort of more the eye test kind of thing. Interestingly, Sarri has described him as a forward. He doesn't see him as a midfielder. That's what he's referred to him as in the press conference. And in the most recent press conference after that game, Hazard's gone and scored a hat-trick, and they've asked him, "Oh, is he one of the best players in Europe?" And he's like, "Yeah, he kind of is, but he kind of needs to do more in the penalty box." And it's like, okay, well that's exciting, because he basically said he drops deep too much. So like when you've got a guy who's just scored a hat-trick and then his manager's like, "Actually, I want him closer to the goal," it just that is just really ominous.
Yeah,
I mean,
so alarm bells ring then, don't they, for fantasy managers without him?
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, that's one of the reasons why I pulled him in, and obviously, in terms of because I mean, I had the similar dilemma that Az has talked about. Do I really want to get rid of my Liverpool double up? I think I do, just because I just feel like there's going to be more rotation with Liverpool. Whereas the other key thing about Hazard is that I just think why would he get dropped? I can't see that at all. And Sarri hasn't hinted at any kind of rotation. The Europa League kind of feels like he could play without Hazard on Thursday, and it wouldn't be a problem. And keep him fresh. I mean, I'm not saying he's not going to play. But Hazard there hasn't been any hint of rotation at all. Whereas Klopp's been, saying, team might change. Obviously Liverpool playing right now. I think Salah's just had a goal disallowed, funnily enough. Which means that I'm just less certain about Liverpool. So do I really want to pump that much money in? Whereas Hazard is like the talisman for Chelsea.
Yeah, Andy, what do you reckon? You got him in, haven't you, already? So.
Yeah, I mean, disregarding the points, I'm so glad I got him last week, because I would not like to be making this decision this week. I think it's super tough to get rid of Mane or Salah. If you're on a wild card, I think it's a no-brainer because of the next kind of 3 fixtures for Liverpool. But if you're just making a transfer like ours, I think it's really tough. If I look at the fixtures, on paper, they don't look too great. It's got Liverpool, Man United at home in the next 4. So the fact they're home games is a little bit better, but it is 2 top 6 sides. So worth considering. But he has caused the likes of Man United quite a few problems in recent seasons. Mourinho kind of almost gets a bit scared about him and tries to deploy like Herrera onto him to stop him doing anything. And that's worked in one game, but not necessarily in the others. And obviously Liverpool you'd expect it to be quite open as well. And I know West Ham won 3-1, but I thought they were, if it wasn't Everton, they would have conceded a lot more. I didn't think they were great, West Ham. So, I got to agree with everything you say. He seems happier because, like you say, he does seem to go. I think we even mentioned it last week. Every other season is like a 200-point score. Like he's unhappy every other season. And another thing that he's been talking about, which he's kind of happy about, I think, is Giroud as well. He's kind of bigging him up about how he's a really good target man. That obviously helps the way he plays. And, he's going to be up against Zabaleta against West Ham, which I think is pretty good for him. And I don't know. Like the stats, you're right. They're not quite there for him. When he scored 5 goals with 6 shots on target, which is probably not sustainable. But at the same time, we've seen players do this, and there's no reason why. I mean, the one thing to remember about Sarri and Chelsea is it's still brand new to them. They're all trying to still find their feet, and yet they're top of the league. So, I mean, how much better can it get? And if he does get into the box more, and he kind of takes the guidance of he doesn't have to track back as much as maybe he would have done under previous managers, Conte and Mourinho, and managers like that, that shot volume is just going to go up anyway. In which case he'll be getting more chances, and yes, he won't keep up this conversion rate, but he'll have the amount of shots that it can drop a bit. So he just looks like a must-have right now, the way he is. But we've seen this before. We've seen him be a must-have. We've seen him get big scores, and then he goes off the boil. And he's that kind of player you've got to keep for a long time to get the points. And at 10.8 million, that's a lot to ask, really. So would I switch Mane or Salah this week? I think I'd probably take the risk and keep them. The only obviously downside to them is they look like they're going to play a hefty amount of minutes tonight. And then they've got people like Shaqiri that could come in. So I don't think either of them are going to not start. I think they're going to, at most, probably come off early. So they can do the damage to Southampton. I think Southampton are poor, so should be an easy win for Liverpool. But I don't think I'd make the switch. If I was on a wildcard, I think it's a no-brainer. But if I wasn't, I think I'd probably keep Mane and Salah.
It's part of the reason why I wildcard, to be honest. I didn't want to have to make that decision. I had so many other things that I wanted to do. I just figured, actually, do you know what? If it just takes that dilemma away. One other thing I wanted to mention, actually, just on the whole Hazard versus the other two. The other thing is he's definitely on penalties, whereas neither Mane or Salah are, because Milner, quite clearly, as we've seen from the penalties taken tonight, there's no way anyone's taking that off him. Of course, unless he doesn't play, but that's an if. Whereas Hazard is just...
as well.
Yeah, exactly. All he has to do is turn up, make a few nice passes, and he gets bonus, doesn't he?
I mean, that's a real thing for the captaincy, isn't it? Which we'll talk about a bit later. But Salah has to do a hell of a lot to get bonus because he's got so many shots off target. Hazard basically just walks on the pitch, smiles, and there you go, bonus. And then he's definitely got bonus once he scores. What have we convinced you or not convinced you? What do you think?
I don't know. It really is a difficult decision. I think the problem is with captaincy. I think Andy's right. You're spending that much money on him. You want to be able to captain him, or at least have him as an option. And actually, you look at the captain options for the next few weeks. Aguero stands out in terms of fixtures, but there's question marks already about his minutes. You're looking at Salah and Mane. They've got some tough games coming up at the Southampton. Hazard's games get quite tough after West Ham as well. I think he's got United coming up, although he does tend to do quite well there. So I kind of feel actually out of those options, Hazard might be the best pick. So if anyone's being put off because they're worried about captaining him, I think who else you kind of really going to go for in that run? He does seem to be fairly logical. I kind of feel like with having Salah and Mane as well, I'm having to use 2 spots to kind of cover one player, if you know what I mean. Whereas if I just get Hazard in, then I've kind of got all, that's all the only player I need from Chelsea. I don't need anyone. But with Liverpool, you kind of always feel like you need these 3 players. And I wasn't happy after that Spurs game because I thought, Liverpool are fantastic, but if they do blank or if they lose a game or something, that's 3 of my players in one game, gone. And spreading the risk out a bit actually does seem quite appealing. I mean, Sarri came out and said he wants Hazard to get 40 goals this season. Yeah, I can't see him getting 40 goals. Cardiff to me, Cardiff fans, to me they're the worst team in the league.
Glad you said it.
There's no way I can see them staying up. So it is tempting to get carried away with a big performance like that.
If you transfer him out for Mane, do you have to take a hit?
Yeah.
See that?
I'd have to do Pedro and Mane to Fraser and Hazard.
Yeah, so straight away he's got to score a goal just to cover it. I mean, I'm only asking because other people will be considering the same thing. I don't know, like a straight swap, almost. Yeah, I don't know. A hit would. I think that would just put me off even more.
It's got, I mean, Mark touched upon it quite a lot over quite a few of the scout casts. It's how much do you kind of need the money as well, because if I'm going to lose some money on Mane, if people are selling him, and Hazard's already gone up 0.1, he's going to go up again tonight. I think, he could even go up again before the weekend. I could potentially be sort of 0.4, 0.5 down. If Fraser goes up as well, then suddenly I'm 0.5 a million down just through waiting. So is that 4 points worth 0.5? I'm not sure. I don't think I'm going to do it. I think that it's the Southampton game is just. I mean, you saw Southampton last night. They just went to pieces in the second half against Brighton, and Brighton were just so bad in that first half, and they still managed to score 2 goals against them. I can see Liverpool just crushing Southampton, and I can see Chelsea winning against West Ham. But I don't think it's going to be as easy because Pellegrini's going to get them well drilled, and they were solid in their match against Everton with the 3 sort of holding midfielders there. Obviously, Zabaleta's not going to have a few problems, but I can't see Hazard getting a hat-trick in that game. I think he's going to do quite well, but I wouldn't captain him. Salah will still be my captain, so it's a 4-point hit for a player I wouldn't captain.
I think Hazard is, the only player in the game to have attacking points in every round so far.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think, myself and David were chatting on the captaincy video we did earlier this week, and one of the points raised there was I think you're guaranteed points with Hazard. It's just a question of how many points. And I think another 20-point haul is just too much to ask for. But I think you're looking at somewhere at least an assist, probably a goal and an assist, something like that. And you're probably looking at, it's just a question for Salah or Mane owners. Do you think you're going to get more for those two? And if you're factoring in a hit into it, I'm not entirely sure. But having said that, I mean, I went down the Pedro route before I got Hazard in, and he doesn't cover Hazard. Put it that way. Willian and Pedro will be rotating, and actually, it's the one that doesn't start is the one you want out of those two, but you never know which one it's going to be.
So when William came on and scored,
Pedro starts the game, does absolutely nothing. William comes on. So
just the reverse of what happened the week before, isn't it?
And the week before. So what happens is he sends on one of them to kind of like, once the opposition is beaten down, he just sends on which one. To be honest, if I knew that Pedro was going to be the guy coming on at 60 minutes every week, I think he's worth getting in, because that's the player you want.
He probably will be next week, won't he? Because he's
that's the danger, and that's the potential for your move, and also the move of all those others who haven't got Hazard and want to swap and maybe use a hit. It's the potential for being in our rough with the smooth is just so high. Whereas I guess for people like me and David, the potential for being in the kind of average, kind of we don't really mind what happens is
one thing.
There.
One thing I will say on it is even though it was Spurs, and obviously they didn't score too many goals, Liverpool, in that game. Well, it was a tough watch not to have Mane and Robertson, and
they were so close to getting points, weren't they?
Yeah, it was a tough watch, and that was just Spurs. So yes, like everything looks rosy for me right now. It doesn't look necessarily as rosy for those that had the Liverpool players, but this week I think Mane, Salah, and Robertson will do the business. I just don't see why they won't against Southampton, as long as they all start, and I think they probably will. So I think that's the thing with FPI. It's like you try not to react to the bad things necessarily, and just obviously look ahead. And
Mane as well, sort of 42% ownership. So goal really for him could really hurt. Equally, Hazard's now at about 28%, I think. So yeah, previous seasons we've always complained about kind of a lack of option, and it is quite exciting to have. People are actually making decisions like this, and I think you still got players like Sterling and Sané who are playing more minutes now, and they're owned by so few. I couldn't believe it when I looked up Sterling's ownership, and it's 2.9%. Just 11 million is a lot of money for him, but if Aguero is going to be rotated, then I think he could be the go-to player to go for. So I think it's getting quite exciting. We're only 5 weeks in.
Okay, there's another player that people have been asking about. Not quite as pricey as Hazard though, is he? Have
they?
Well, okay.
Fraser.
It's in the notes.
Oh, sorry,
possibly in front of your face. I don't know.
It's in the bottom. Sorry.
Too many tables and stuff.
Too many tables, Joe. Too many tables. Yeah. Fraser. Well, Fraser's the other player who I'm considering as well. So Darth Crid says, is Fraser the real budget deal, or should we be spending a bit more on King or Wilson? Is an attacking Bournemouth double up an option? So what do you think about that, Joe?
Well, Fraser is the reason I wildcarded, and people will go, no, you're lying. It's because of Hazard. But it's not, because Fraser is the Scottish key that unlocks my wild card, because to get the team I want on a wild card, I needed a quite good player who's priced around the 5.5 million mark in midfield. I just couldn't do it without it, because I want to keep Salah. I want to keep Aguero. I want Hazard, and I also want to keep that really big defence, because a couple of seasons ago, I keep harping on about this disastrous wildcard I did where I put everything into 3 players. I want to still keep that mix going around my team. And I needed a good player, 5.5 player to do it. And I think Fraser's that man. I think he's the kind of Joe Allen. People go, wow, Joe Allen, what are you talking about? But Joe Allen, if you remember, when he
just making the Scottish Welsh Jesus or something.
He's the Scottish Joe Allen. I mean, people say the Scottish Messi. Forget that. He's the Scottish Joe Allen. And I say that in terms of Joe Allen was just completely outperforming his price, and for the same reason, Josh King completely outperformed his price, and Danny Ings in a way is outperforming his price. I just think he's a really valuable player to have for someone looking to wildcard, and obviously he's doing really well. So he got 11 points game week 1. 18 points there. Game week 2 against West Ham, he got 6 points. So he's registering returns, 2 mega hauls as well, within that 5 weeks as well. And his underlying stats are good, 11 chances created. So Silva's top and Salah are top with 16. So he's level with like Eriksen, Hazard, Willian. These are the kind of players you have there. So for me, I think he's an absolutely great player to have. And if he wasn't available, I don't know if I would have wildcarded. I probably would have done some kind of hit, maybe if I wanted Hazard in, or not got him in. But he's just that. Well, and because we were talking on after we did our breakfast club on Saturday with David and Mark. After recording, Mark was suggesting that I should get James Milner in, because I was saying I was searching for that kind of cheap midfielder. And annoyingly, I think he's right as well. So I think Milner's on penalties, and he seems to be playing all the time. And he's fit and in working order. And I think I've got a backup to Fraser there in Milner. But Milner is not good enough to wildcard, but I think Fraser is.
Yeah, I think with Milner, you're relying on the penalties. It's an interesting little addition to the debate about Hazard and Salah and Mane, because if you still think that Liverpool are going to get goals, but you want to have Hazard, and you haven't quite got the money elsewhere. I mean, yeah, it's tricky, because I'm going to go Fraser. I'm not going to go Milner, but he's just an interesting person to have there, because in the past people have picked people like Milivojevic, who's sort of a little bit cheaper than Milner is now, to be fair, because he's in a team that gets lots of penalties and gets lots of fouls. So there's definitely an argument for Milner.
I think you're always running the risk a bit with Fabinho and what. They've got so many kind of central midfield options now, and I'm surprised Milner is he's playing really well, and he's actually quite important to their team. But Fabinho's going to come in sooner or later, surely. I would have thought.
I'd be worried about the rotation, definitely. But because I've been surprised that he's played so much. But it's the fact that he's played so much that makes everybody kind of turn their heads, because that if he does play every week, then he becomes more of an option.
It is interesting with Fraser, because as Darth Crid says, you've got the other players there to kind of, you could be a bit risky, because Joe thinks Fraser's essential, but I mean,
essential for me wildcard, for the team I want. He unlocks it.
Yeah, okay, for the team you want, but then
you've got to quote him right. Come
on. Yeah, I know what he means. But I mean, Wilson, he's got the best stats of the bunch. He's returning in almost every game. He's looking really good. You've got King now on penalties, it seems. That's been a bit of a merry-go-round, but the fact it landed on him, at the weekend, implies that he's got them. Then you've got Fraser, who is supposed to be the creative player, who I think, as you said, just kind of took advantage of Pereira's positioning. So will he do that again? So the double up seems probably a bit much to me for them. But I like Wilson. I think out of the three, if I was going to, go for one of them, and forgetting about positions or anything, I think Wilson and his stats looks particularly good. I think he's going to carry on scoring well. So I like Wilson. What about you, Andy?
Yeah, no, I actually think double up's fine, just because of the fixtures and how well they're playing. I mean, you got to think yourself Bournemouth are a side we always consider one that like to attack, but they don't tend to score a huge amount more goals than kind of other teams in that kind of area. But obviously right now they're doing really well. And the thing I like about Fraser, it's not just stats; he's like passing the eye test as well when you watch him. Same for Wilson. I think King is. Maybe I'm just bitter because I sold him, but he is padding out his points with penalties, and that's not a bad option. It's one of the reasons we said we liked Hazard, because he's on penalties, and obviously King's going to get them throughout the season, especially with the likes of Wilson and Fraser getting into that box and potentially winning penalties for him. So I just think with the fixtures they've got, the home games are good, Southampton and Palace. Burnley away, in previous seasons, I'd say no, that's a 1 goal at the most. But Burnley just look really bad right now. They're just conceding shots left, right and centre. Bit lucky, I think, against Wolves to only concede 1. So I think the fixtures are good. So double up just because of their price. I mean, if I was wildcarding again right now, I'd probably switch Maddison to Fraser and maybe go for Mitrovic instead of Wilson. But I don't think if you're not wildcarding, you don't have that luxury to switch around and you need to make some money and Fraser's the one and you've got Wilson or King up front. I think that's fine right now the way they're playing. Individually, they both look like good options, so I don't see why they can't be good options together.
Andy, on your wildcard, who was your Fraser? Who was the key that unlocks it for you? That
Doherty, to be honest. Doherty instead of Robertson.
There is one, yeah.
And Bennett as well. I went really cheap. I went Bennett, Doherty, and 4.5 set and forget.
So in a way, I mean, these types of players are essential to a wildcard because they suddenly emerge and they're offering that value, and you can do it. And it's a nice segue, Andy, into the team we're to discuss. And who is it?
It's I'm just hitting the unmute button. It's Wolves. So, like I just said, I've tripled up on them on my wild card. I think a lot of people look at them because Bennett's only 4 million. Looks like it's his place to lose at this point. Dendoncker wasn't even on the bench in the last game, and then they've got attacking fullbacks that are better than Alonso for only 4.4 million. Bolly, like you said earlier, has got points in him. Goal threat from corners look pretty good for a goal potentially soon from corner and bonus points. And Patricia in goal, a lot of people looking at him and saying, forget Jimenez up front. So I think there's a lot to like about Wolves. Licious Lizard says they're starting to look like the real deal. Is it worth doubling or tripling up? I mean, I've already answered that with my wildcard team. Wesman Tooth as well talks about Doherty in particular. What an asset. Is he the best route into the Wolves attack and defence? David, go.
Doherty was definitely one that I was looking at. Mark said to me at the start of the season, you're going to find that you're going to point out loads of players are really good and it'll be so frustrating when they do well. And Doherty was definitely one of them this week. He was in the scout pick, so I guess we can take some credit as a group. His positioning is just great. I mean, some people might have seen a tweet that Neil put out of just his heat map is just ridiculous. And he said, find me someone who loves the right flank as much as Doherty does. And and because he's 4-4 as well, it's just great. I mean, it's frustrating in a way because he's like half the player that Douglas was. So anyone who watched Wolves in the Championship, like they basically sold their best attacking fullback. But at 4-4, it's a great price. Patricio is in my team as well for now because Wolves just you look at the big chances that they've conceded, it's still really really low, and they've definitely got loads of clean sheets in them. They're the two I'm looking at. Some people have been talking about Jimenez. I don't know if I can really bring myself to get Jimenez. Yeah, I think double up defensively is about as far as I'm going to go.
Jimenez, look, I mean, maybe again a bit biased because I bought him, but I thought he looked really good. Again, I don't want to put too much into a match against Burnley, but he was in the right places. He was, like I said, for the Doherty chance, it was him that assisted it. And I don't know, I just think for 5.5 million, he's maybe a bit shorter term just because of the fixtures and the missing game for Ings. Obviously, it's Man United away this week, so the only downside to it when Ings doesn't play. But Man United haven't looked exactly defensively sound this season. So I like Jimenez. I think obviously the draw is to Ings. His stats are a little bit better. He's on penalties as well. We don't know if Jimenez is. I don't think Wolves have had one yet. I think the thinking is it's going to be Neves, but it could be Jimenez. So yeah, I like him. I'll put him in the hat, Jimenez, but I don't think anyone's going to agree with me. No,
well, I mean, I like Wolves now. I've got a soft spot for them now. I just thought, promoted side, everyone's going, they're like, AC Milan or something. And I think they offer such good value and they're really good. I mean, they'll probably be somewhere like a mid-table side, but for a newly promoted side you pretty much expect that at this stage of the season. That's really good, I think. And they've got the talent there. The problem is my wildcard, the defence. I actually want 3. There's 3 of them that I want for completely different reasons. So Bennett is the one I've currently got, because I'm not quite sure how my budget's going to pan out. But at 4.1, I think he's amazing value. Bolly is another player I really want as well. I've had him for the start of the season. It's because of the bonus. He's got his minutes per baseline bonus is one every 5.6 minutes, which is better than all Wolves defenders are there. It's the absolute pinnacle there. So as in comparison, Doherty's one every 10 or so minutes. So he's kind of twice the man Doherty is in terms of bonus. So if they're going to get a clean sheet, chances are Bolly's going to get a bonus. So if you think they're going to get that clean sheet, you're looking at kind of 7 to 8 points for him, which is exactly what he's been getting, really. But Doherty's got those goal attempts in him, and he loves that flank as well. So he's had 8 goal attempts. And Johnny's had 6. So I think Johnny's like kind of not quite Doherty. So Doherty's my man for that bit. And that goal threat there. And then he's created 6 chances as well. Johnny's a bit better for chances there, and lots of crosses. He's just, really want him as well. That's great value for 4.4. So I think there's 3 really good options there. One I'm not actually really considering. I may change mine, but not at the moment. Is Patricio, because whilst he is a good defender, a good goalkeeper, and we think Wolves are going to get clean sheets, I just think, looking at it, I just think all of those ones I've mentioned are better for all of the reasons there. Whereas Patricio, I think there are better goalkeepers there. So there's goalkeepers who I think will get more clean sheets. So for example, Hennessy possibly will match him for clean sheets there. But also Brighton's fixtures at the moment have been awful, but they're getting better, and I think their defence is going to get better. And I think Matt Ryan's going to be a good option in a few weeks. I actually think the Newcastle goalie could be a good option. He's a bit more though, because have a look at their fixtures; they're really good coming up.
I looked at Yedlin actually. I did look at before I put Doherty in. I did look at Yedlin, not for right now, but when the fixtures clear.
I'm thinking of one of my spaces in my wildcard to be a kind of a 4.5 defender based on fixtures. So at the moment, it would be a Wolves or Palace one, and then further down the line, I'd be looking to perhaps swap for a Newcastle or Brighton one. Let's see how they go. But in terms of saves, I joked that Joe Hart. Well, everyone joked about Joe Hart for the last 2 years. But going into that game, he made more saves than any other top flight goalkeeper in Europe. So he's pretty good. So he's gone from like 0 to hero completely. So his minutes per save is for starting goalkeepers is great. It's one every 16.7 minutes. So put that in comparison, say Patricio is one every 32 minutes. So he's getting double those amount of saves there. So yeah, Patricio's 14 saves, Hart 27. So if I'm looking at saves but possibly not clean sheets, Hart would be my man. And currently Hart is in my wildcard side, but he may go out because it's just a 4.5. But their fixtures are good, and he's just racking up those saves. And it's like, since I've started playing this years ago and got Schwarzer in for Fulham, and you get a good shot-stopping goalkeeper with a poor defence, and that's absolute FPL goal because they rack up those saves. And especially now these days with the
Burnley
bonus
keepers
changes
as well have always been
Burnley keepers. So if they can start getting clean sheets, then Hart's looking at 8, 9, 10.
Do you think he's going to keep his place with Heaton?
That was my worry. That's why
that was my worry. But we're 5 games into it now, and there's no sign of him not. And he's posting those kind of Europe-busting save stats. I just don't think he is. He's younger than Heaton as well. There was an amusing thing with Andy Gray. I don't know whether you saw the
I saw that.
Football commentator. He was referring to Hart, some ancient kind of man, and Heaton is this young man. But Heaton's older than Hart. Which is crazy. So yeah, when Nick Pope comes back, Nick Pope will be number 1. I would assume. And then obviously my favourite Fabianski there is racking up the saves as well. McCarthy as well. These are all dodgy defences. These are good shot stoppers in poor defences. So do I go for one of them, or do I go for that kind of Hennessy, Patricio?
I'll tell you who's not on that list of good goalkeepers: Jordan Pickford. He's been an absolute nightmare for me all season. I thought with the fixtures Everton had, I thought he was a great pick, but he's not. He's awful. Can't wait to get rid of him.
Yeah. So what's your thoughts on Wolves then, Az?
Well, I've got Johnny, who no one had at the start of the season. I've got a friend who's a Wolves fan, and he was absolutely devastated that Douglas had been sold. He said that Doherty would really struggle to make the step up and all that. So I kind of thought, okay, well, I want a wing back in my team. Wolves are the only team that have a wing back, so I'll go with this other guy, Johnny. And you know, I think he's great. I mean, when I saw him in the first couple of games, he looked like the kind of player who, he was getting forward, but I wasn't sure he was going to really create loads of chances or score goals or anything like that. But watching him against Burnley, I mean, he was so unlucky not to come away with attacking returns in that game. He had a shot cleared off the line. He had a couple of other shots, and like he's had 6 goal attempts, and Doherty's only had 8. And Doherty got the assist and 3 bonus. So obviously his points are higher, but I do think Johnny's time will come. He's created 8 chances. Doherty's created 6. His bonus, as you mentioned, his baseline bonus is better. So when he does get some attacking returns, it's pretty likely he's going to be in the bonus there. So I'm happy with him, and I'd be looking to get Patricio in as well, just to go against everything you just said. If I was going to go for kind of a sit and forget keeper, I think Wolves are going to get a decent number of clean sheets this season, and for 4.5, it's probably between him and Hennessy for me, I think. But I've got Wan-Bissaka as a defender, and then Johnny, I'm looking at more for attacking returns now, so I wouldn't even mind doubling up in the kind of easier games. It's interesting that the attacker, I started the season with Jota, and there isn't really any attackers I'm considering. You've got Neves and Matinho kind of pulling all the strings, but they don't seem to quite be clicking up front just yet. It's something not quite right there with the kind of the front 3. So I'm going to hold off on that, but definitely in defence, I think there's great value there.
I think Jimenez has. I mean, like he's in Andy's side. I think he's got that potential. He's another kind of key to unlocking a good wildcard team. I mean, I've got Ings, and I had Ings, and Ings benefited from Ings' price rises. So I'm now, not that I'm locked into Ings, I just think he's still good value. But both are broadly similar in terms of their underlying stats as well. So Ings has had 15 shots in the box, and the Wolves man 12. But Jimenez has had big chances. He's missed 5 of them. So I think that's the kind of thing. I think he's missing more chances than Ings, and Ings is perhaps just that much more experienced in the Premier League. So, but there's not a tremendous amount in it for both of them.
And I think getting that many big chances though is a good sign if that can keep up. Yeah. And you'd expect him to. I don't think he's a dud kind of player. I think you'd expect him to start converting them sooner rather than later. It's just whether or not they can keep up that number, because it's pretty high at the moment.
Okay, so let's move on to our key talking point. Now, this is by popular demand, David. When I put up the hot topic on Fantasy Football Scout about this, people like something that you said on the Breakfast Club, and they wanted more of it. So what's all that about?
Yeah, so... Yeah, on the Breakfast Club, I was talking about. I've mentioned it already tonight. My reasoning for sticking with Robertson and Mane for at least one more week was because that left the right flank for Spurs is an area that historically they've struggled on a lot of that. Basically, they've conceded more assists from that flank than I think centrally and on the other flank put together. It's something ridiculous. So that just tipped the balance for me to make that decision. And then, so Rash written in to say, on the Breakfast Club, you guys gave us some great in-depth stats regarding opposition weaknesses. We'd like some more information on that. Tamagotchi Massacre said, we don't get enough of this. So that's, can we know each team's big weaknesses? It might allow us to track opponents and look for teams who excel in the same area and can exploit, which is a great point. I mean, interestingly, I've been trying it a little bit with the set piece articles we've been doing on the site, because what did really well over the summer was with the World Cup was looking at teams that did particularly well from set pieces and getting those takers rather than just getting a set piece taker in a team that doesn't do particularly well at set pieces. But two particular ones that I found for this week that I quite like the look of is that Arsenal have conceded a lot of chances created on their right flank, and they seem quite vulnerable there, which is not really that surprising, bearing in mind that Bellerin likes to push forward. And obviously they're going to be playing Everton this week, who are going to have on their left flank, we assume, one Richarlison. So that's one that I'm quite interested in. I mean, as a wild carder, that's quite exciting personally, because getting him in for a game like that, Arsenal have been so poor defensively, and on that particular flank is where they've been more susceptible. The other one that was quite interesting is Watford seems to be a little bit susceptible on their left. Holobas seems to like getting forward. So I was hoping that was the flank that Schürrle plays on, because his shot count is ridiculous. But it's Vieto, the other winger, who might have a lot of luck against Watford. So it's interesting going through a lot of these and picking out some individuals. But I've noticed that you've got some as well, Joe, that focus around headed goal attempts.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think these are as good as your ones, but mainly because headed goals are actually quite rare. Then obviously football's meant to be played, as getting all Brian Clough, on the grass, with your feet and all of that. But nevertheless, there are some good matchups coming up. So what I did is I looked at teams that concede the most headed goal attempts, and that's Southampton, Newcastle, Tottenham, Fulham, Huddersfield, Watford, and Burnley are amongst those who are pretty poor at that. And then I looked at teams who've had the most goal attempts, and that's Cardiff, Everton. These are headed goal attempts, rather. Cardiff, Everton, Burnley, again, Southampton. And I've also put in an honourable mention with Fulham with 11, because the majority of them is just one player. So looking at that top of the headed goal attempts charts is Mitrovic, so he has 8. And now he's got Watford this weekend. So Watford are amongst those teams that concede most headed goal attempts. You can see where you're going with that. So Mitrovic is going to be having a lot of headers. They're going to be conceding a lot. So there's a chance of a headed goal there. Plus, again, he's got game week 11. He's got Huddersfield. Once again, Huddersfield concede a lot of headed goal attempts. That could be one there. And then this is a weird one. Don't laugh. For a real differential, Cardiff defenders. So Sol Bamba has had 4 headed goal attempts. And Cardiff as a team have had 18 headed goal attempts. That's top. So they're going back to that list of teams that concede the most. Burnley game week 7, Fulham game week 8. Sol Bamba is an interesting, if he's on your bench, you might want to consider playing him one of those weeks, because he could be in the chance with a goal. I've dumbfounded you with that.
Yeah, where'd you go with that?
Well, I was just going to say, Bamba's actually played in midfield on the odd occasion as well. So, I mean, if we're really going down the rabbit hole on Sol Bamba, who Neil Warnock loves, by the way, he's a big fan of Sol Bamba. He'd play him up front if he could. He loves that man. But yeah, that's all I can add. Sol Bamba has played in midfield. That's just add to.
They'd probably get more goals if they did.
Yeah, it might do, to be fair. I mean, that's basically going to be all they're going to get goals from this year, right? Set pieces. They just. Yeah. Which actually, to be fair, is kind of lends to your point a little bit more. Like, if they are a team that knows that all they can score from is set, but I think Huddersfield are the same. Huddersfield haven't even scored from open play yet. Those two teams, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to bring any of the defenders in, but if you are looking for a differential, set pieces can make a difference. So,
because I know Brighton, we really struggle with set pieces. I think we've conceded the most of anyone over the last year and a half, by quite some distance. Everton as well, I think, concede a lot from set plays, and it is definitely something I consider when you do have a few, a few captaincy options or whatever, and you're looking at set piece takers. Then that is, that was a good thing. I mean, I remember Salah last year against Brighton, when they absolutely destroyed us in the first game. That was one of the reasons. I think there was a few captaincy options that week, and I went with Salah because he was taking some free kicks then, and I think he got 2 assists from the free kick. So. Yeah, it definitely is useful to consider these things.
So what about you, Andy? So you've said that you weren't too interested in the stats for this one, but the eye test, is there anything you've seen where you think, they're particularly frail in a particular area and another team's particularly strong in an area?
Nothing that springs to mind, but like to piggyback on the Everton and Arsenal right flank, is it Digne? I don't know if I got the right pronunciation there, but he. Yeah, that guy that played left back instead of Baines for the last 2 games for Everton. He's looked pretty attacking now. Again, I appreciate not everyone wants to jump on Everton defence necessarily, but if you want 4.8 million, it's pretty cheap. He started the last 2 games, so hopefully that continue. But I think he created 4 chances to have 4 goal attempts either in the last game or like the last couple, and played some pretty good crosses against West Ham. So. If you are going to target that right flank, maybe him. But like I said earlier, I suppose someone like Hazard, next 4 fixtures don't look great on paper, but he has caused some of those teams problems before. You've got Zabaleta on the right for West Ham. And even against Liverpool, Trent Alexander-Arnold has done really well. But quite often he gets left there because Salah doesn't necessarily track back as much as potentially Klopp would like him to. So I think on paper Hazard's fixtures don't look fantastic, but just where the position he plays against those Man United who almost just cower in the sight of him, it should still look really good, even though the fixtures aren't necessarily the greatest.
On Alexander-Arnold, interestingly, this Champions League game that I think has just finished, I was watching the first half, and Neymar was basically just stood where Alexander-Arnold would be if he was actually a right back and not a wing back. So, I mean, it's definitely, people have noticed it. So, I mean, yeah, on the Hazard thing, that's a great place to go and stand because PSG have worked it out tonight and scored 2 goals. So,
yeah, it's not that I think he's a bad defender. It's just the way their team is set up.
Yeah, exactly. The space there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's have a look at next game week then. So now, what we always do is we look at our differentials and clean sheet picks, and handily, as you've been starting to track how we've been doing. So how we've been doing, and then hopefully you'll ask us how we're going to go this week.
It's definitely something we're missing from from when we've done these for years and never really tracked them. So yeah, I've just put together a little spreadsheet. So we all pick some differentials and clean sheets every week. I think maybe the reason I tracked it was because I actually nailed both of mine. So little plug there. But I had Sigurdsson who got 7 points, which I was happy with. Scored a header from a set piece. I mean, what? Why wasn't he taking the set piece? I don't understand. That's literally the reason I picked him, so I can't claim too much credit. But yeah, I was quite happy with that. Yeah, it definitely was. Yeah, unfortunately, none of you guys got your differential players. And with clean sheets, it was me and Joe. Joe went for City, I went for Wolves. So that was that. So who are you guys all picking for your differential and clean sheet this week? David, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so I think I picked third on the clean sheet because I was thinking about Palace. And someone's taken them already. No spoilers. Yeah. Oh well, we will spoil it. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I've gone Man City. So yeah, we'll be talking about how terrible Cardiff are. I mean, to be honest, they could score in that, but I've got to back Man City in that. Surely, Cardiff are terrible.
There's no way Sol Bamba isn't scoring in that game now.
Well, yeah, he's going to score from the halfway line, but he's going to play up front. He's going to
score a header from the halfway line.
Next week he'll create an FPL league called Sol Bamba doing bits. You know it. But yeah, I've gone Man City. I can't see Cardiff having any possession in that game, and so then Man City hopefully will just close them out. And then am I doing my differential now as well?
Yeah, you might as well.
Yeah, so differential that I've gone for this week is can't remember him now. Who have I gone for? What? Let's do someone else's differential. I can't remember who I've gone for.
Andy?
I've gone for Lacazette. So one thing I know, last year we used to do like fantasy and risk and we basically picked players that we were never probably going to put in our teams. I can't
remember who it was going to be. I would never pick him.
What I'm finding interesting is you get to pick players you would potentially pick or are more realistic, and I'm always surprised at their ownership. Now, obviously, Lacazette's not been started, but 4.2% owned. Started the last 2 now, 12 and 5 points, in a bit of form. And he's got a pretty good partnership when Aubameyang plays. Obviously, Aubameyang's having to play a little bit wider to accommodate him, so he's got the central spot. But in the last 2 games when he started, he's had the most shots inside the box for forwards. And obviously, like I said, Aubameyang is accommodating him out wide. He's also created 5 chances, and he is up against Everton. And although I've just plugged their left back as a major punt, I do think Arsenal are going to do well in this. And I think maybe they're just starting to find their feet now under Emery. I think obviously Mkhitaryan looks out on his ear. At this point, at least. And Everton didn't look great against West Ham. Richarlison back will probably help that. He'll give them a bit of an outlet and actually maybe give the opposition defence something to think about. But yeah, I think Lacazette looks...
I really want Lacazette in my team.
Yeah, I've actually at the start of the season. I'm so annoyed that I didn't keep him because he's come good.
I checked earlier. Now, obviously, it's not a move I would make this week, but I checked already, and David Silva to Fraser and Callum Wilson to Lacazette is a possibility. So I've already eyed it out, but probably not this week.
I've remembered now, by the way, it was Josh King. The reason I couldn't remember, I touted Sterling in our little group chat because he's 2.9%?
2.9, yeah.
And I mean, I was either going to go him or King. I actually couldn't remember who I went for. I went for King in the end because I'm not sure that Sterling will start. So King's on penalties. Bournemouth look like going to get goals. It's just, I mean, he's not. Wilson and Fraser would be the 2 I'd go for. But if you're looking at getting a differential 3.3%, I think it is. He's massively lost his ownership, and he's the same price as Wilson now.
When you think of all the people sort of on the site and on Twitter and everyone who had King, you think his ownership's going to be like 10-15%. But actually, it's it just shows that there's this little bubble, isn't there, around us kind of managers who take it this seriously. And there's Andy, who's your clean sheet?
So I had to pick last. So I didn't feel like there was too many left. I wanted to go for Man United, but then I've got Jimenez, and I don't know, I want Man United to win like 5-1 in that game. So I went for Leicester, who I know haven't been doing well for clean sheets so far, but as Apple Bongers keeps pointing out on Twitter and his podcast, is Wes Morgan could possibly be the problem in that defence, and he's suspended. So that potentially could be a good thing for Leicester. And yes, they're not been great for clean sheets, but they're playing Huddersfield, and Huddersfield are rubbish. So it potentially is like again on a wild card this week, I'd maybe be looking at the likes of Chilwell and Pereira again. So and I think for the one I was looking at, kind of match shots and stuff, teams are conceding. Leicester are pretty low down. And when I've watched them, and I've watched the harder games, Liverpool, Man United, I didn't see the Bournemouth one, but they've done pretty well. So I'm not quite sure what went wrong in that Bournemouth game to be so massively hurt, apart from Bournemouth being on such good form. But yeah, against Huddersfield, I think you got to back anyone at home.
And Joe?
Well, I got to pick first on the clean sheet, so I went for the obvious. Well, I thought it was the obvious one. Anyway, Liverpool at home to a Southampton side without Danny Ings, who they're not going to rely on Holberg to score every week. Without Danny Ings, I just think they're blunt. And Liverpool are fantastic at home defensively. They've conceded 11 attempts at home so far. Okay, small samples, just a couple of games, but that's the lowest out of anyone at home. And they've conceded no goals at home as well, which is fantastic. So I just think that's a guaranteed clean sheet. Famous last words. My differential is a young man who excelled at the World Cup without actually scoring, which is Giroud. And I think he's going to be nailed now for a while. I think he's got the better of Morata in that please help Hazard score role. But I think he's going to get on the score sheet. The reason is he likes playing at West Ham. He's had 5 goals against them already while at Arsenal. I think he's going to play, and I think he's going to score. So there's my differential.
Nice. So my differential, I'm going to go for Sané, 2.9% ownership. I don't know what his ownership was at the start of the season, but I think it was really high, and obviously he couldn't get in the team. I think Mendy's injury, might sort of pave the way for him to come back in. I'm not sure Mendy's going to start, against Cardiff. If he doesn't, if he's not on the bench or anything tomorrow, which I don't think he will be, based on what's the news that's going around. If he misses a few weeks, it'll be interesting to know what people decide to do with him. Whether you hold on to a 6.2 defender, whether you try and move him on. And I think when he doesn't play, that obviously that gives Sané. They need Sané on the left to provide the pace and the trickery. So Sané at 2.9. Bit tempted by Sterling, who's at 3.9, but I'll stick with Sané. Clean sheet, I'm going to go with Palace. I just think when Tompkins and Sakho play together, they've got a great chance of keeping a clean sheet. And they're against Newcastle, who they're also going to struggle this year. They're trying to shut up shop against a lot more than they did last season, and they're just not scoring anyway. There's problems with Rafa, so I think backing teams against Newcastle at the moment is probably quite a good idea.
Okay, well let's move on to what we're going to be doing next game week. I think we'll do Andy and Az first, and then me and David afterwards, because we're wild carding. So Andy, what's your plans and who are you captaining?
Yeah, off the back of a wild card, obviously I've set up, so hopefully don't have to do a transfer this week. I'll keep an eye on Aguero and Mendy. If Mendy's out for a couple of weeks, I'll probably use that as an excuse to ship him. Potentially even getting Robertson back, even though I know he's got those 2 tricky fixtures, because I think he's going to do well this week. Or like I said, Pereira or Chilwell. But the plan will be to keep the transfer. And the captain's on Salah, although now we've got around to this week, I must admit I'm getting a bit of cold feet about him. I just following the end of the game now, and Firmino's come on and scored the winner, and he's kind of like chucked his bottle down as if he's annoyed that he didn't get to do it. So I don't know if you see that as a bad thing. Maybe he's just having a bad time at the moment, or he's got that eagerness to be on the pitch and scoring, which could be a good thing. But because I held on to him for this match, and it is Southampton at home, and I just don't think they're going to have enough about him, I'm probably going to stick to him. But you've got to look at Aguero and Hazard. But I think I'll ultimately stick to Salah. And then if I do save a transfer, I've got this plan in my head to be a bit more aggressive and potentially get rid of Salah next week as a very short-term move, because their fixtures are so good that I'll probably want him back. So the only thing is, I just don't know if there's many midfielders that I want to bring in that I don't already own. But I'm looking at Spurs, basically, because of their fixtures.
Okay. What about you, Az?
Well, I talked about it earlier. It's what I do with if I kind of rip my team apart in to get Hazard, or if I leave it for another week. I'm not really sure. I think I'm probably going to leave it. I do quite like the idea of Salah and Mane against Southampton, as we discussed, and it kind of gives them a chance to redeem themselves for the Tottenham show. The worst part is though that Chelsea game's on the Sunday, so if I get another blank out of Salah and Mane, and then I've got to watch that Chelsea game on Sunday, I think I'll have to go.
I love those psychological. Like, it shouldn't matter. Like, I tend to try and make my decisions without looking when the games are. But they do play on your mind. Whether or not you go through with it because of that, they do play on your mind.
It's like Pickford. Sure. Like, I'm almost happy to have Pickford in my team because he plays at the 4:00 game on Sunday, and I don't have any other players. And it's like he's going to concede in the first 10 minutes, but those 10 minutes of hope are almost worth it.
You should plan a day trip on Sunday. I don't think you're going to need to watch Pickford.
I think
even though I'll play the Sky game because that actually is semi-important in that.
I think I'll just
like who plays on what day.
I'll just sleep the whole day and just wait. So I think I'm probably just going to leave it. It depends on Mendy. If Mendy's out, then I need to make another transfer because I won't really have a bench because Gundogan is a risk and Kamara doesn't play, and my bench is a bit shaky. Yeah, if Mendy's out, I'd be more tempted to wildcard, but I'd probably just do Gundogan to Fraser, and then I'd have that to cover Mendy's injury. I might do Gundogan to Fraser anyway, but then.
Oh, I would.
Yeah, but then I've got a bit of a benching headache because I've actually got quite a good team this week. It's a bit tough, but
well, it's better to have that than because there'll be a surprise. But yeah, I would definitely do that. So David, come on then. What's your work in progress wildcard looking like then?
Well, yeah, it's nowhere near finished yet, but it's as most wildcards, it's basically just set up to protect value for a couple of days. So the first thing that I did was I took Salah out, not because I don't want him, but because I was hoping that he might fall to 12-9 and then I can get him back in again at the end of the week and hopefully capitalise on an incoming hat-trick, potentially. The great thing that has done is it just gives me, just a bit of time just to see, well, what could I do with the Salah money, which is a fair amount, to be fair. I've got about 2.3 in the bank, and I've got Hazard and David Silva, I've got Fraser. I think I want to keep the holy trinity of defenders of Robertson, Mendy, and Alonso. Although, this thing going on with Mendy, I need to follow. But it's annoying because I feel like he's one of those players who should be first choice most weeks, and I don't like the idea of getting rid of him when I've got profit tied up in him. So I'm not settled on that yet. In goal, I've got Hennessy and Patricio at the moment, but I need to do a bit more work on that. I mean. But this is just another one of the reasons why I wanted to wildcard. Like Foster and Fabianski just weren't cutting it, which is annoying because I thought they would. They rotated very nicely, but West Ham haven't been keeping clean sheets, and Fabianski's only really been adding extras here and there. And I really just need a rotation that I feel is going to get me some clean sheets. And as we've discussed, I think Wolves and possibly Palace is the best way to go there.
Yeah, the two I'd go for as well. Yeah. I really like those two as goalkeeper options.
Yeah, I mean, I need to have a little bit more of a look because there's a couple of I don't really think I want to start Patricio against Man United. So I think Hennessy works well for the most recent game week, but there's I think there's another tough game for Wolves in a couple of weeks' time. I want to have a look at rotations first. I'm not too set on that. I think I want to get Mitrovic, although he's not actually in my squad yet. Just because I wanted Ings to get that price boost, which he now has, to be fair. But Mitrovic, I've got to look at. Fulham's fixtures are now really good. He's doing really well for shots. A lot of people think that he's a bit of flash in the pan, but when you look at his underlying statistics, he's just absolutely on it. For his price point, the shots that he's taken each match, and he's one of those players who just everything goes through him at Fulham. So he's one I'm definitely going to have by the end of the week. I just I want to soak up a bit more from value first. So yeah, lots to go, but Salah out was the first thing I did.
Who would you be captaining? From all that, Salah back in. Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, that's the other tricky thing is that's what I've all got to work out. I mean, I really want to have Salah, but if I feel like I can build a better team without him, it sounds like the beginning of the season again. I feel like I'm almost going against what I said. I said you have to have him. I'm enjoying the next couple of days because it just gives me that chance to see what my team could be without him. And then when I put him back in, inevitably at the end of the week, and I find that my team sucks, then maybe I think again. And yeah, the captaincy will form a part into that. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know this week. Hazard. Probably, but yeah, because Aguero and Hazard probably, but I'm not sure yet. Okay. Yeah, TBC.
Okay, well, I mean, I'll go with my one. I'll kind of start at the back. At the moment, and this will not be my goalkeeper pairing. I've just got it in just to have a look at it. I've got Hart and Ryan because that's sort of pure fixtures. It's pure fixtures. That's not, and it's looking at saves really for Hart. So I feel I might get some clean sheets there. I I've got a thing about Joe Hart at the moment. Yeah, so I think what I may do though is go for the Hennessy Patricio one, because that's the two key cheap defences you want to get at the moment. The only problem with that is when Palace's fixtures really get bad. And there's also a plus and a minus. And I also want to target Wolves and Palace in my defence, my back line as well. So it's a question of, do I want the option of playing one of each every week if I want, or something like that? Or do I want to have a little bit, mix it up a little bit more, maybe get a cheap defender from another team? So it's a bit up in the air. So goalkeeper, a bit up in the air. Moment, Robertson, Mendy and Alonso are still there. I like the look of them. And I am umming and ahhing over getting rid of one of them, though, possibly downgrading Robertson to Mark's favourite, Trent Alexander-Arnold. But maybe Mendy, if he's injured for a week or two, I just don't really want to be leaving that amount of money on my bench. Wan-Bissaka is obviously going to be there. And then a Wolves defender's definitely getting the other place. I'm actually toying with possibly having two Wolves defenders if I don't go for Patricio, because as I said, I think they may play for the same team, but they offer different things. Bennett, that amazing price, and then Doherty, that goal threat, and then Bolly, the bonus.
I honestly, I don't think it's a no-brainer, because I think they'll get clean sheets, so long-term Patricia is good. But Doherty at 4.4 million is just insane. And Bennett at 4.1, I don't think you can turn it down. And you've got to go for a different keeper.
With my current setup, I've just got Bennett in because that's with 4.1. I may need that extra money depending on what happens. But I think, Doherty would get the edge over him just because of that amazing attacking threat. Midfield, Fraser, the Scottish key that unlocks it all. Salah's still there. Hazard is there. I've gone for Højbjerg for 4.4 because basically I've had Stevens, who's gone down to 4.4, so I've avoided that price drop. But it doesn't matter who you get. You just want them to play a bit, because that's the place that is never going to get a look in my team. Maybe might do if I'm really down to the bare bones.
Gone off Kante, have you?
I've gone off Kante. He's too much. 4.4.
What about Ward at Cardiff? That's who I went for.
Ward is good. Yeah. But he's 4.5. So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm eking it out, and I would possibly, if I've got the money, I would possibly upgrade. But it's a funny position to upgrade. So upgrading basically my third bench spot. I just think just go for as cheap as you can, really. I've currently got Maddison there. I'm quite happy to upgrade him to David Silva, though, which would give me Salah, Silva and Hazard, and Fraser as kind of a staple, which I like the look of, but it would require one of that holy trinity at the back going. And up front, Aguero stays. He could become Lukaku if he's injured, but I like Aguero. And Mitrovic, we've already mentioned it, no brainer. Ings, I've benefited from those price rises. I like him. He's missing out this week for me, obviously, because of the loan deal, but I just think we've got such great value there. So I've kept is the same structure, but I've changed about nine players. And I've mentioned it on the Breakfast Club. I don't like to wildcard from a position of weakness, as in, oh my God, I've had an awful week. I like to do it not necessarily from strength, but from, at the moment, mediocrity, really. And that's what I want to do. I want to basically build on the core success of what I've got and get rid of the things that could do better. And I'm hopeful I'm doing that. But we shall see. We shall see.
The first name, one of the first names on my wildcard team would be Richarlison. Definitely, because Everton are just so attacking, and he's going to go straight back as that team with the main man again, and he's not suddenly a bad option. Because of how strongly he started the season.
The role he would occupy is basically occupied at the moment by Maddison or David Silva. Now, David Silva's better, I think. So if David Silva, I have room for him, he would definitely get a nod. But yeah, I do agree, actually. He's basically him or Maddison, really. And I'm quite like, it's a typical Dalla, really, but I do like the having this kind of structure, as in I've got that price point of a player and get one in there, because it allows me to be a bit more flexible there, hopefully. But once again, Harry Kane is the only one that I don't think I could get in. I think I can get pretty much anyone I want within a couple of moves. So I could have got Hazard in this week if I wanted to within 2 moves, but Kane, I just don't think I can get. So I'm just hoping
that Kane anyway. Don't worry.
No, you don't at the moment. I don't feel you do, but he's a nagging, annoying, prolific, golden boot winning striker that can explode at any time. And those that get on when he does, it's a struggle for me because it would have to be.
It definitely is playing on my mind with the wild card.
Yeah,
it's me thinking I don't want to save it for too long. And
no, it's the one caveat I think with wildcarding now. To me, it just felt right, and everyone we often say it's just felt right to do it for me. But I think in the 2 or 3 game weeks, if Harry Kane eventually, then those that wildcard to sort out getting a strong team with Kane could be laughing.
Maybe this will come back to bite me, but I gave Harry Kane almost zero thought when I wildcarded.
I have now, but
I've got no clue how. Well, I've got Salah, I suppose, so that's a way to get him in. And look, maybe he'll find form over the fixtures, but there's been so much stuff written about how he's just shooting so much less since the injury and stuff, and
he's dropping deep.
Moore is playing.
Moore has been a problem. Advanced. I wonder if some will come back in soon and maybe shift things around a bit. Obviously, he started tonight in Europe. But I don't know. Personally, I didn't even think about Kane. Didn't think how we'll get him back in. I worry about that when it happens because right now there's so many other players for less money that perform, and I just don't think you can fit him in that price. And I say that as a man that's got Salah, who I know also has just blanked twice, but he can always be downgraded to a different midfielder potentially.
I think those that wildcarded those that got Salah out a couple of weeks ago are currently up on the deal, especially if they got Hazard in. And I think those that have done that but haven't wildcarded yet, I think could be, because when we look at the end of the season, what was the most successful strategy? That could be because Salah's the kind of player that you need to wildcard in. And if you're wildcarding him out, then you've wasted that because he's so tricky to get back in. So if you've got rid of him and you've already used your wild card, that's a big problem if he becomes the player he was last season again. But yeah, it's lots of trouble. There's these big players. Hopefully they're going to stay quiet like Kane. But for now, thanks everyone for joining me. It's a good night from me.
A good night from me.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night all.